Yeah, I bet. So if it's not fuzzes you're doing, I mean, surely it's not. I mean, you recently bought a Univibe. I've seen. What other sort of effects do you enjoy using and working with?
I really like ambient effects. So I used to have a GC Plethora X5, the tone print thing that I won from a giveaway, and that covered all my ambient needs for a long time. So I didn't really feel the need to buy other ones, but my favorite other effects besides fuzz are definitely delay and reverb. I
Mm,
like pitch effects and some modulation, but generally I really like kind of drive and ambient. Those are
mm.
my two genres of pedal. I mean, I like boosts and overdrives and higher gain preamp style distortions, but generally I like fuzz and reverb and delay. I could own a lot of reverb and delay pedals, but once I kind of have my bases covered, I really don't feel the need to buy a bunch more of those because it kind of goes back to that thing I said. I mean, you can get a lot of variations on hall reverb, but once you have a good hall reverb, it kind of negates the necessity of owning so many more.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And delays are very different as well, dependent on which one. I've got the Walrus Audio Bellwether, and I'm thinking of swapping that one around. I'm getting something different. Just fancy a change on the delay. But again, they're just so very different, aren't they? We put them side by side, how they're voiced, just so different.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it really is. I've got the Boss, the DD6, I think. Obviously, they're very different breeds. Obviously, one's analog and one's digital. But I tend to go for analog delays mostly. But then sometimes you switch on the digital delay and you get all those nice sparkly repeats and everything. And it's all nice and tight and focused. And it just inspires you to do something else, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it's funny that you say that. I have had a DD3 and a DD6, and one of my friends owns a DD2 that I got to play on a lot. And so one of my goals, sometime, it's on my list. I have a long list of things that I want to acquire, but one of my goals is to have a DD2 through DD8. So have one of each unit
Wow.
because I like the Boss delay that much. I feel like it's probably, there's definitely other more advanced circuits, but whatever they did with how their stuff repeats, like you just click it on and it's your sound, it just keeps repeating.
Yeah.
It's something about, Joe Satriani said this years ago, and that's probably why I bought it so hard. Is like the way Boss delays the repeats work is they kind of get out of the way, and it
Mm.
doesn't sound, there's not a big volume jump or a big drive jump or something. It just is your sound just with delays now. And I've noticed that to be true. So that's maybe why I like the Boss stuff. But then for character, I definitely do like the analog stuff. Like I just demoed the analog delay last night, and that was my first time playing an actual analog delay in a while. And I was like, oh yeah, I miss this because I used to play Electro-Harmonix, Memory Boy, Memory Toy. One of the, I think I had
Mm.
both, but they were, that analog delay character is really unique, and you can't really get it from a digital pedal.
Yeah, and what sort of music have you all typically always been into? What's I mean, you mentioned ambient there. Is there other stuff you've always listened to, or?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot recently. I think someone said something like whatever you listen to when you're 14 years old or something like that is what you go on to appreciate for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
I think I was lucky in that when I was an early teenager, I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of music because mom was a musician. She was a punk musician in the 80s and up through the 90s and played in hard rock bands
Hmm.
um, deep into my teenage years, etc. And so I was surrounded by kind of hard rock and punk music. And then dad listened to a lot of country music, like, and 80s and classic rock. But then, right around when I was 12, 13 years old, my great uncle passed. And he was a huge music lover. And he had a collection of about 2,000 CDs that we inherited.
Hmm.
And so I got a lot of world music, and I got a lot of jazz and a lot of
Hmm.
outsider, like kind of interesting musician music. And so I think what my roots are pretty varied. And if you look at my solo music, you can hear that in the early days, a lot of it sounds like rip-off Satriani, because that was kind of one of my biggest influences.
Hmm.
But then it kind of evolved, and I started playing with all different kinds of stuff. But generally, the blanket answer that I give everyone is rock and metal, music, and then I occasionally will go ambient and experimental, and that's kind of my two main genres, more or less.
I think music, when we're growing up on our teens, it does stick with us. I remember talking to Lucky, and obviously Lucky's into all the punk and everything, you know. And I said to him, because my sister, she introduced me to a lot of music. She was 15, I was 10, and I could hear these records and tapes being played from her bedroom, and you know, bands like The Who and Jesus and Mary Chain, Susie and the Banshees, Sex Pistols, and a band called Crass. Now, when I'm usually mentioning Crass, nobody knows who they are, but Lucky, what the camera didn't show was Lucky almost falling off his chair to show me this badge he got, with a Crass badge. You know, but that sort of punk stuff is great music, and I was influenced by that. All those sounds from the sort of 70s punk, and also things like Queen as well. My parents were listening to Queen, so I was influenced by that as well. You know, we definitely take it from those earlier years for sure.
And one influence that was really strong for me was actually U2. I don't know how influential The Edge was for you personally, but for me growing up, I started with Joshua Tree, and then I think my next album that I really got into was All That You Can't Leave Behind. So I was really into what The Edge was doing on guitar, and when I would read about him, it became pretty obvious that he was really into the effects and into pedals and into kind of textures and soundscapes. And when I started my first bands, they were all kind of these rock and metal bands, but I wanted to play with pedals and make whale noises and wall of sound and things like that. And I think a lot of that traces its roots back to what The Edge was doing, and me being really interested in kind of the guitar taken as far as it can, with the texture, rather than just we're plugging into an amplifier and playing power chords, because that can get pretty tired. As wonderful as that is, it can get tired before too long.
Yeah, and I think when you're the only guitarist in a band as well, you've got to approach it differently. I mean, I've played in bands where there's other guitarists. I remember playing a band a few years ago with a guy, and we used to swap lead duties and play rhythm duties, but having that other guitarist there was, you approach it very differently. So when you're there as a guitarist on your own, and all of a sudden there's a lot more space there that you've got to fill. And I think those use of effects, and particularly delays, help to just fill it out a bit and just give it a little bit more of a pad and give the sound a bit more of a bigger boost, you know. With regards to your YouTubes and things like that you're doing, how's it all going at the minute?
Yeah, so YouTube is going well. I get relatively low views on, so this is a perfect example. So I've been uploading a lot lately because I'm kind of catching up with things builders have sent me. I did some early demo work for a handful of builders like Chris Ray and for Garland. And what I realized is I don't like those old videos. I hadn't really refined my demo format yet. So what I decided to do is go back, and any video that I felt was worth revisiting, I started to redo in my new format, which is, instead of just kind of me playing and then a shot of the pedal, I reach over and tweak it. Now what I try to do is, it's an interactive thing. So I'm introducing it, I'm playing. There's a lot more playing than talking, but there's a component that I realized was missing in my videos, is that what people really want is kind of an interaction. So I'm talking about my impressions of what's happening as I'm playing it. And I think that's the piece that people say they don't want talking in demos. What they really do want is to feel like they're getting your impressions of it rather than just hearing a demo. Because I've seen it in the watch times. As soon as I started adding kind of an interactive component, my watch times went from 1 minute to 4 minutes on average. So it's like, I realized that there's something about that format. So I kind of do a brief introduction, keep it under 1 minute of talking. Sometimes I'll even take, so just to backtrack quickly, is so when I do a demo, I kind of set everything up. I start it, I do my intro, and then I'll play. And then usually I'll play around 20 minutes. By the very end, I've really warmed up to the pedal and I've kind of started to really like feel what it's doing. So what I'll often do is take a clip from that last 3-4 minutes of the demo and slide it to the very front. So you hear kind of my best impressions of what the pedal can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was, but to answer the question correctly, the YouTube is growing at a good rate, but you would be surprised how few views I get versus when I share my special edits on Facebook. So I get about an average of 30 views on a new video that I don't promote whatsoever. So I just upload on YouTube. I don't spam a link in forums. I may post it to my personal page, but that's it. What I find is way more effective for the builders I work with is if I do a 2 to 3 minute edit that's like the best clips from that 20 minutes. And I splice it all together and I make it in the square format. You've probably seen that my videos are in square format on Facebook. It's because it's bigger in the feed. So instead of being like this on the feed, it's like this on the feed. So when you're scrolling by, it takes you longer to get past my video.
All right.
So you're probably going to watch it.
I'm just writing that down for when I do mine. Square format.
So it's an extra piece of work because YouTube, it really needs to be 16:9, which is normal, like rectangle, like a computer monitor. But for Facebook, you really want it to be square. And it's also the same format as Instagram. And Reddit, I've started to branch back out into. I really hate the culture on Reddit. They tend to be a lot more negative. But every once in a while, something will do well there and people say nice things. And I continue to hang out there. But it's probably given me the most grief of any social media I've been on.
All right. So, and you're getting most of your interactions and review or your positive interactions from Facebook then? Is that your main?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's because people can't be truly anonymous on Facebook, where on Reddit they can be. So they tend to be a little negative and attention seeking. And people have a lot of jealousy if your post is doing well. So they tend to downvote it because Facebook doesn't really have a downvote feature. So that, I think that's kind of contributed to the negativity on Reddit.
That's bizarre, isn't it? Why that would happen? Just bizarre, but there you are. That's how it is, isn't it? You know.
But I've had like top post of the day a handful of times in r/guitar pedals just because of what I was talking about. When I shared Lucky's Demonic Machine, the big thing, the big black thing,
with the
tube in it.
Yeah, I saw
and
it.
That demo is coming soon. I wanted to make sure I did it really nice because I kind of want to. I had my one shot where I shared the first impressions, and that was pretty good. But I want to do something a little more polished than normal because that was such an extreme build. So I want to do something way more involved than my normal stuff. But anyway, that one is coming. That'll be really exciting. But yeah, it's the culture on Facebook, I think, is very pedal friendly because of the target demographic in the gear forums. So like Instagram is kind of a medium younger audience. I used to only do Instagram. I just almost quit YouTube entirely when they took away my partnership in 2017. Because I used to be a paid partner on YouTube before 2017. And I just was getting positive interaction on Instagram. So I went all in on that and I made a video every day and built a little bit of following there. But I'm always more about the community interaction than necessarily drawing the attention back on myself. I like having friends and fans, but I'm more about the interaction than about, selling merch or building up my own brand.
Yeah.
As long as people are watching. Yeah.
Yeah. And funny enough, I've noticed Instagram is very, it's very friendly, very approachable, very interactive. People want to see and hear what you're up to and what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? And you'll get a lot of interaction. YouTube, less so.
The algorithm is a tough one to crack.
For me, definitely. What's working for the group is definitely Facebook and Instagram. Twitter you know, but then again, if I look at a lot of the builders and a lot of the guitarists on Twitter, they're not getting a lot of interactions either. It's very, very different. Very different.
Yeah, I think our audience tends to be, I would say, players from about 25 to 45, 50. And a lot of us, just the way we interact with our friends and family tends to be more so on the Facebook especially, but on Instagram to a lesser degree. But the gear community tends to be people that are pretty comfortable with Instagram and Facebook. Like I tried doing a little bit of gear content on TikTok and I had zero luck. But I have friends that have like comedy style content and that stuff goes gangbusters.
Yeah.
So I think that for what we do for our interests, that right now Facebook and Instagram tends to serve our purposes well, because it's easy to share videos and it's easy for people to just jump on and interact. I think YouTube, it just buries your videos, and unless someone's specifically looking for it, they won't necessarily see it.
I think that that's very true. Also, Twitter. As you probably know, I play in a tribute band doing 90s and Britpop and that sort of thing. And there's a huge Britpop and indie community on Twitter. It's massive, absolutely massive. And people of all ages, so even sort of early 20s, you know, are really into the Smiths, Oasis, the Blue Tones, and bands like that. But it's going back to what you said earlier about that you pick up music from when your parents and things like that. So whereas I grew up in the 90s and I was big into Britpop and I went to see Oasis at Nebworth and places like that, you know, it's then passed down to their children, isn't it? You know, so all the young 20-year-olds, they're loving the Britpop thing. So the Twitter page for my Britpop band is doing fantastically, you know. It's
that's great.
It's just one of those things and how it is. So, but